Princess Admiral Seraphine Vale laughed before the whole Royal Navy when the human ship limped into formation, and that laugh nearly became the last sound her empire ever remembered of her. Because the vessel Earth had sent to escort the Sapphire Crown Armada did not glide like a warship, did not shine like a diplomatic jewel, did not hum with aristocratic power or carry banners large enough for the stars to notice. It arrived late, crooked, and coughing pale blue exhaust from engines that looked older than half the treaties in the sector. Its outer armor was patched in 5 different alloys. Its nameplate had been repainted so many times that the original letters showed through like scars. And one of its antenna masts leaned at an angle so embarrassing that 3 noble captains asked whether it had been damaged in battle or assembled by drunken miners. The ship was called the Mercy of Soul, a human rescue frigate officially, though every officer in Seraphine's fleet privately called it the Rust Bucket before it even finished docking. Seraphine stood on the command balcony of the Royal Dreadnought Radiant Crown, wrapped in white admiral silk and gold armor, violet eyes bright with the easy cruelty of someone raised among perfect machines, and she watched the little human ship take its assigned position beside 57 Royal Capital ships, 6 moon carriers, 12 crystal lancers, and the sacred flagship that carried her mother's living throne. Then she opened a fleet channel she knew the humans could hear and said, "Tell me, Captain Arden, is that a warship? Or did Earth send us the container it was delivered in?" The bridge crews laughed because princesses were allowed to be funny even when they were unkind, and because humans were still new enough to court diplomacy that mocking them felt safe. Captain Elias Arden appeared on the reply screen a moment later, not offended, not ashamed, simply sitting in a cramped command chair beneath pipes, exposed cables, dangling emergency tags, and a handwritten sign that read, "If it rattles, thank it." He was middle-aged by human measure, lean, brown-skinned, dark hair cut close, gray at the temples, wearing a faded navy jacket without decoration, except a little blue earth patch over his heart. Behind him, his crew looked like workers who had accidentally wandered onto a battlefield. Mechanics with grease on their sleeves, an old navigator with brass spectacles, a young comms officer chewing something nervously, a medic asleep against a bulkhead. Seraphine expected a defensive answer. Perhaps a proud speech about human resilience. Perhaps a complaint to the diplomatic council. But Captain Arden only glanced toward some blinking gauge off-screen and said, "Your Highness, if Earth ever sends you the container, be grateful. Those are harder to kill." More laughter burst across the royal channels. This time with surprise, Seraphine smiled despite herself, then dismissed the screen before the human could become charming. She told her flag captain that Earth had sent a museum piece because it feared risking real ships near the royal border. Her officers agreed, because agreeing with a princess was easier than thinking. The Royal Navy was built to be admired. That was its first weakness. For 3 centuries, the kingdom of Lyrinth had survived by making beauty and violence look like the same divine language. Its ships were long, bright, and nearly alive, grown from pearl metal in orbital gardens, their hulls covered in ceremonial filigree that doubled as shield vanes, their cannons folded out like silver wings. Their engines sang in harmonized frequencies so clean that lesser navies measured. Their own reactors against Lyrinth tuning forks. Every bridge held marble floors, translucent command wells, and officers trained since childhood to turn battle into performance. Seraphine herself had won her first duel at 19, broken the Corsair princes at 24, and become High Admiral before 30. She was not stupid. She was not cowardly. She was not merely ornamental. She had earned command in the hard school of border war. But she had also inherited the royal disease of polish, the belief that excellence should look excellent, that strength should gleam, that anything ugly must be either poor, desperate, or obsolete. So when Earth offered the Mercy of Soul as part of a joint, ceremonial escort for Queen Alessandra's journey to the Meridian Summit, Seraphine filed it under political courtesy and personal irritation. One old human frigate could not matter. Not among the Sapphire Crown Armada, not with the Queen aboard. Not while every hostile power in the quadrant watched and understood that attacking Lyrinth royalty meant inviting annihilation. The meridian route crossed the Siren Veil, a region of cold nebula currents, broken moons, and abandoned beacon chains where ancient wars had left metal ghosts drifting between gravity wells. Seraphine had chosen the route herself because it was shorter, dramatic, and symbolically powerful. The Veil had once marked the outer boundary of Lyrinth terror, the place where her ancestors had first turned raider clans into kneeling provinces. Now her mother would pass through it on the way to peace talks with 50 lesser states, surrounded by the most beautiful fleet in living memory. While poets watched from sanctioned recorder drones, the human captain requested permission to run old-style sweep patterns along the rear flank before entry. Seraphine almost refused, then allowed it, because the political office had reminded her twice that Earth disliked being treated as decorative. The Mercy of Soul peeled away from formation with a clumsy roll and began dropping small sensor buoys that looked like dented barrels. They flashed amber instead of royal blue, drifted without elegance, and made one carrier captain complain that the human trash was spoiling the visual record. Seraphine agreed and ordered the buoys kept out of ceremonial framing. Captain Arden acknowledged with a polite, "Copy that, Your Highness," and continued placing them anyway. Just beyond the camera angles, like a man planting seeds in soil no one else believed was fertile. Then the enemy did not attack the strongest ships. It listened for the proudest ones. The first sign was music, a soft, harmonic tone entering the fleet channel as the Sapphire Crown Armada crossed the outer veil. Seraphine heard it under the bridge noise and frowned, because it almost matched the Royal Engine Choir. Almost, but not quite, a fraction lower, a fraction mournful. The tuning officers adjusted filters, assuming nebula interference. The Queen's flagship sent a formal inquiry to the beacon chain, and the beacons answered in perfect old Lyrinth code. All clear, all clear, all clear. That was the second sign. Because no abandoned beacon should have known the current royal cipher, Captain Arden called from the rear flank. Voice suddenly clipped. "Radiant Crown, this is Mercy. Your beacon chain is singing back to clean. Recommend formation break and full analog check." Seraphine's bridge went still for one irritated breath. Her flag captain whispered that the human was interrupting ceremonial transit. Seraphine opened the command channel and said, "Captain Arden, the Royal Navy does not scatter because a rusted hull dislikes music." Arden answered immediately, "No, Your Highness. But you should scatter because music can be a net." She looked at the tactical display, 57 capital ships in flawless formation, each tied into the Queen's navigation choir. Every shield frequency aligned for maximum ceremonial brilliance. Every engine singing the same elegant pattern through the veil. And for a brief moment, something in her training, something older than pride, told her the human might be right. Then the bridge lights turned crimson. The siren veil closed around them like a hand. Asterisk, every royal ship lost independent navigation in the same second. Not by explosion, not by brute force, but by obedience. Their perfect systems trusted the matching song, accepted the beacon chain, synchronized deeper, and then woke inside hostile mathematics. Shield vanes locked in parade configuration. Weapon wings refused to unfold because the safety choir believed the ships were still in ceremonial corridor. Helm wells filled with ghost commands signed by dead admirals, and across the whole formation. Captains shouted over each other as their beautiful vessels began drifting into intersecting orbits. The Queen's flagship Aurora throne vanished behind a curtain of static, then reappeared, 30,000 kilometers off course, shield flaring white under invisible pressure. Seraphine slammed her palm onto the command stone and ordered manual override. But Lyrinth manual override still passed through royal authentication. And royal authentication was exactly what the trap had learned to mimic. The bridge screens filled with enemy markers at last. Not ships in formation, not honorable attackers, but thousands of black needle drones unfolding from the debris fields, machines of the Varkesh Combine. A species Seraphine had dismissed as pirate engineers with delusions of empire. They had not come to defeat the Royal Navy ship by ship. They had come to make the Royal Navy defeat itself. The first Lyrinth Lancer turned under Ghost Command and fired into the flank of a friendly carrier. The impact scattered a line of escort frigates like glass beads, Screams burst through the channels, then cut off as the trap converted distress signals into more music. The rusted ship was the only vessel the trap could not hear. The Mercy of Soul did not drift with the royal formation. It lurched, dipped, and slid sideways like an animal shaking off rain. Its engines did not sing in the Lyranth choir because human engineers had never been invited to learn the choir. Its shields did not align through royal channels because they were patched civilian plates from 4 shipyards and 1 lunar salvage law dispute. Its navigation did not accept the beacon code because Captain Arden's navigator used a paper star ledger to mechanical gyros. And a dead reckoning board bolted to the floor after a solar storm had once taught him hatred for automatic trust. Seraphine stared at the tactical display as the ugly little ship burned free of the harmonic net, dragging its own dented buoys behind it like old cans on a wedding chain. Captain Arden's voice cracked across emergency band. All royal vessels, kill your engine choir. Physically cut synchronization relays. Do not mute them. Cut them. Seraphine shouted back that half her ships could not respond. Arden said, then tell them with light. She almost cursed him. Then saw the Mercy's leaning antenna mast spark to life. Not broadcasting through standard channels, but flashing hard white pulses into the nebula. Long, short, long, old vacuum lamp code, primitive. Ridiculous, visible, and impossible for the harmonic trap to corrupt. The human message repeated again and again. Cut the choir, cut the choir, cut the choir. Seraphine had mocked the Mercy because it looked old. Now old was the only language still free. She turned to her communications officer. Signal lamps. Now, the officer blinked. Princess. Those are ceremonial antiques. Seraphine stepped close enough that her reflection sharpened in his eye lenses, then used them ceremonially. The radiant crown's outer hull opened tiny gold shutters last used during coronation parades. And for the first time in a century, the royal dreadnought spoke in light, not data. Seraphine sent Arden's instruction across the fleet. Cut the choir, cut the choir. Captains who still had eyes and courage understood. Some sent engineers with plasma axes into sacred engine chambers. Some overloaded harmony crystals. Some smashed control altars with ceremonial swords. One moon carrier broadcast a prayer to the Queen, and then severed its entire aft command spine, tumbling free just before 3 ghost-guided lancers would have impaled it. The formation became uglier with every ship that survived, engines coughing out of tune. Shields flickering, weapon wings half open. But ugly men alive, the Varkesh drones surged in anger. Switching from trap to slaughter, black needles swarming wounded royal ships, slicing at exposed relay veins. Targeting lifeboat bays and medical decks first, because pirates knew terror spread faster when Mercy died. Seraphine ordered the radiant crown to cover the Aurora throne. But her helm still answered in spasms. Her gunners had partial control. Her shields were locked at 30%. The Queen's flagship was drifting toward a mine cloud disguised as frozen debris. Too far for any Lyranth ship to reach through the chaos. The little human frigate turned toward the mine cloud. Seraphine saw it on the display and shouted before she opened the channel. Arden, no, your ship cannot survive that field. His face appeared, lit by red alarms, crew moving behind him with frantic competence. Perhaps not, he said, but your mother cannot survive it either. The Mercy of Soul accelerated, not elegantly, not even straight. Its patched engines flaring beyond recommended limits, dragging a chain of sensor buoys and magnetic grapples behind it. The human navigator called distances by voice because the main board was smoking. The pilot answered with curses and numbers. The old medic woke long enough to strap herself to a cabinet. And Captain Arden stood braced behind them like the ship was a horse that respected stubbornness more than command. The Mercy entered the mine cloud ahead of the Aurora throne and began firing not at the mines, but between them. Rail shots nudging debris, buoys flaring, grapples snapping open to catch and drag explosive spheres into each other. It was not royal combat. It was harbor work, salvage math. Battlefield janitorial madness. It's a kind of maneuver no polished admiral would imagine, because it required a captain to see space not as a stage, but as a junkyard full of things that could still be useful. The first mine detonated against the Mercy's forward shield, then the second, then 4 more. Armor panels tore loose. One engine blinked out. The ship rolled so violently that Seraphine's bridge crew cried out as if they were aboard it. But the Queen's flagship slipped through the gap the rusted ship made. A cheer tried to rise on the radiant crown, then died when the Varkesh revealed the second layer of their ambush. Larger vessels emerged from the shadowed moons. Not pirate cutters, but real warships, angular, matte black, their hulls painted with kill marks from unreported border massacres. The Combine had hidden a fleet inside the Veil, while Lyranth intelligence watched official channels and admired itself. Their commander appeared across every captured frequency. A tall insectoid general crowned in sensor spines, General Kavrek. Once a prisoner exchanged after the Corsair campaigns, his mandibles spread in a smile Seraphine remembered from tribunal footage. "Princess Admiral," he said, "your navy's magnificent. I thank you for bringing it in one piece." She wanted to answer with royal fury, but half her transmitters were down, and her fleet was bleeding. Kavrek continued, "Your mother will be taken alive. Your captains will be displayed. Your ships will serve the Combine after we scrape the gold from them. And your allies will learn that beauty is easiest to steal when it travels in formation." Seraphine looked at the tactical board. Every answer was bad. Fight and lose the Queen. Retreat and abandon half the fleet. Hold formation and die in place. Then Captain Arden cut into the channel without permission. "Generalist, this is Captain Elias Arden of the Terran rescue frigate Mercy of Sol." Kavrek paused, as if the human signal amused him. Arden continued, "You are operating within range of Terran Humanitarian Escort Authority. Withdraw from civilian royal transport lanes and cease fire on lifeboats." Kavrek laughed, a dry clicking sound, human. "Your ship is rusting on my screen." Arden looked at some unseen damage report. "Yes," he said, "but it is still on your screen." That was the moment Seraphine realized the human was not trying to sound brave. He was buying time. The Mercy launched its remaining buoys. Not toward mines now, but toward the debris fields where Varkesh needle drones were refueling from hidden caches. Each buoy unfolded a tiny mirror sail and began flashing lamp code. Seraphine did not understand the pattern, neither did Kavrek, and that ignorance held everyone for 10 precious seconds. Then the abandoned beacon chain across the Siren Veil began to answer. Not with corrupted royal music, but with the human pulses the Mercy had seeded before entry. Those ugly barrel buoys Seraphine had wanted hidden from ceremonial recordings had mapped every false beacon, every dormant relay, every buried Varkesh repeater. The Mercy had not been littering the route. It had been teaching the dead infrastructure a second language. Captain Arden gave one order. Lantern net, wake, and the veil changed. Thousands of microtransmitters hidden inside the buoys activated at once, flooding the nebula with unsynchronized analog noise. Not elegant jamming, not clean electronic warfare, but a storm of whistles, clicks, light pulses, heat flashes, and broadband human stubbornness. The harmonic trap buckled. Varkesh drones lost shared timing. Royal ships regained fragments of manual control. And Seraphine saw, with a humiliation so sharp it felt almost holy, that the rusted ship had suspected danger before the first note sounded, had prepared while she mocked it, had taken the rear not from weakness, but because rear guard was where traps revealed themselves. Seraphine opened a full fleet channel through signal light and emergency voice. "All ships follow the human markers. Break by threes. Cover lifeboats. Protect the Queen. No captain fights alone." The command felt strange because it was not beautiful, not doctrinal, not royal. It was practical, messy, borrowed, alive. The Radiant Crown's engineers cut the last choir relays with explosive bolts, and the dreadnought shuddered, as if waking from a dream. Helm control returned in ragged pieces, enough for Seraphine to turn her flagship between the Aurora throne and Kavrek's main advance. Her gunners unfolded the forward lances manually, crews pulling release chains beneath the deck because automation remained infected. The cannons emerged unevenly. One stuck halfway, another leaking coolant. Seraphine would have been ashamed of the sight an hour earlier. Now she loved every ugly flaw that meant a living hand was fighting back. "Fire," she ordered. The radiant crown struck the nearest Varkesh cruiser across its spine, not destroying it, but forcing it to veer into a debris pocket the Mercy had marked with flashing amber. Mines consumed it in a silent white bloom across the veil. Lyrinth's ships began fighting like survivors instead of performers. Carriers launched fighters on visual flags, lancers formed shield walls by eye, damaged frigates rammed drone clusters away from lifeboats, and royal officers who had once recited perfect doctrine started screaming wonderfully imperfect orders into hand mics. Asterisk, the Varkesh, had designed their trap for a navy that trusted perfection. They had no answer for a navy learning shame quickly. Kavrek adapted, because he was no fool. He ordered his heavy ships to ignore the recovering dreadnoughts and focus all fire on the Mercy of Sol. "Remove the primitive node," he clicked. "Kill the human signal." Seraphine heard the intercepted order and felt cold pass through her body. 10 Varkesh cruisers turned toward the little frigate, whose shields were already failing, whose port engine was dead, whose hull leaked atmosphere in 3 compartments. The Mercy tried to withdraw behind a broken moon shard, but its vector was poor, and it had placed itself too deep in the center of the rescue lanes to escape cleanly. Seraphine ordered 2 carriers to cover it, but drone swarms pinned them. She ordered the Radiant Crown forward, but a gravity snare caught her bow and dragged the dreadnought sideways. On screen, Captain Arden's crew did not panic. They redistributed power, sealed doors, launched rescue pods toward Lyrinth survivors, even while enemy targeting lasers crawled across their own hull. The young comms officer looked terrified now, truly terrified. And Arden put a hand on his shoulder without looking away from the battle. Seraphine opened direct channel. "Captain, fall back behind my flagship," Arden answered. "Cannot." "Too many lifeboats still in open drift," she said. "That was an order, Captain." He smiled faintly. "Your Highness, I am not in your navy, and I am professionally difficult for the first time in her life." Seraphine begged a scrap ship to survive. The Varkesh opened fire. Beams and missiles converging on the Mercy from 3 angles, the old frigate rolled into them, presenting patched armor where calculations expected weak seams, venting fuel into one missile path and igniting it with a maintenance laser, using cargo clamps as point defense, firing rail slugs so old that one bounced off a cruiser and still knocked its sensor array crooked. Every trick bought seconds, and every second moved another Lyrinth lifeboat behind cover. Seraphine watched the ship she had mocked spend itself without drama, without speeches, without demanding apology. Just work, terrible and generous work. Then a Varkesh missile punched through the Mercy's aft quarter and detonated inside the engine frame. The ship lurched dark, its lights failed, its signal lamps went black, and the whole Royal Channel seemed to inhale. Seraphine's bridge fell silent. The tactical display marked the human frigate as crippled. Probable loss? Kavrek broadcast a victorious click. Primitive node removed. Resume harvest. Something inside Seraphine, something polished and poisonous, cracked completely. She looked at her flag captain. "Cut the gravity snare." He said the bow would tear. She said, "Let it tear." He said the Queen's flagship still needed cover. Seraphine looked toward the Aurora throne drifting behind them, then toward the dark Mercy surrounded by lifeboats, and understood command not as inheritance, not as rank, but as choosing whose life you refuse to discount. "Cover both," she said, "and if our doctrine cannot do that, throw doctrine into the fire." The Radiant Crown tore itself free, losing 200 meters of golden bow plating as if stripping off vanity. The dreadnought surged forward with half its nose open to space. Ugly, wounded, magnificent for the first time. Its lances firing manually, its shield vanes patched through engineering decks, its ceremonial gold burning away under enemy beams. Seraphine brought the royal flagship between the Varkesh cruisers and the Mercy, taking fire meant for the humans. Alarms screamed, marble cracked, officers fell. And still she held position, not because she had forgiven herself, not because one brave act balanced years of arrogance, but because the next right thing does not wait for a clean soul. Captain Arden's screen flickered back for 1 second, filled with smoke, his face bloodied. He stared at the damage across Seraphine's bridge and said, "Princess, your paint?" She laughed like a madwoman. "My ship will survive shame. Will yours?" He looked over his shoulder. "Ask me after we restart the part that exploded." Then the screen died again, but the Mercy's lamps blinked once. Faint, red, not dead, Seraphine turned to her whole fleet. "All vessels, the Mercy is the rescue node. Defend that ship as you would defend the throne." Then Queen Alessandra herself came onto the channel from the Aurora throne. Older, calm, robe-torn, crown askew, and said, "No. Defend it as you would defend the people. Thrones can be replaced." The order crossed the fleet in light and voice, and something like a new navy was born in the ruins of the old one. Lyrinth ships moved. Not in perfect formation, but in gratitude. A moon carrier placed its vast body over the Mercy and took 3 missile strikes along its belly. A lancer that had lost weapons used its shield to scoop lifeboats into the Mercy's shadow. Fighter wings flew without computer coordination, following human lamp pulses and royal pennant flashes like ancient cavalry. 2 damaged frigates locked hulls together to create a mobile wall, and Seraphine's radiant crown fired until its forward cannons melted. Kavrek's harvest slowed, then stalled. His drones found themselves attacked by ships no longer speaking one predictable language. Royal signal light, human noise buoys, hand relays, fighter flares, even lifeboat beacons became part of the improvised network. Every ugly system the trap had ignored now mattered. Every redundant tool the polished Navy had dismissed became a tooth in the mouth of survival inside the Mercy. Human engineers restarted the dead engine by venting coolant through a cracked auxiliary loop and hammering a manual fuel valve open with what looked, on camera, like an actual hammer. The old navigator recalculated the debris drift on paper, while blood ran down his forehead. The comms officer restored the signal lamp mast by climbing into a partially depressurized crawl space tied to a rope. And Captain Arden gave orders with the calm of a man who trusted broken things because broken things had taught him where strength actually lived. When the Mercy's main lamp returned, a ragged cheer burst across the royal channels. Seraphine heard her own crew cheering too, cheering for rust, for stubbornness, for a ship that looked like disgrace and acted like honor. Then Captain Arden sent a private message to Seraphine. "Your Highness, I can get your navy out, but I need you to trust the ugliest route on the map." He showed her the route, and half her bridge officers recoiled. It passed through the Grave Thread, a narrow storm channel between 2 shattered moons where gravity sheared unpredictably in old battle. Wreckage spun fast enough to cut carriers open. No royal commander would take a fleet through it unless defeat was certain. Seraphine studied the projected path. The enemy expected them to retreat toward clear space, where Varkesh cruisers had already formed killing arcs. The Grave Thread was suicidal for a synchronized navy, but maybe not for a wounded, unsynchronized, furious fleet following visual markers and human dead reckoning. "What is your confidence?" she asked Arden. He answered, insultingly low, but better than staying. She almost smiled. "How do you know this route?" "Captain," he hesitated. "My grandfather mapped parts of it during refugee evacuations 60 years ago. No one believed his logs because he brought home a ship with no outer hull and a crew that swore they had steered by arguing with ghosts." Seraphine looked at the enemy board. Kavrek closing, Queen vulnerable, fleet bleeding. Then at the human route, absurd, ugly, possible. She opened the command channel. "All vessels, prepare for Grave Thread transit. Follow Mercy lamps. Ignore corrupted instruments. Trust visual distance. Trust local captains. If you lose formation, save the nearest ship." "Not the prettiest one?" Her flag captain looked at her with open astonishment. "Princess, that is not royal doctrine," Seraphine answered. "Royal doctrine is currently floating outside without a bow." The Mercy of Soul led the entire Sapphire Crown Armada into the place beautiful ships went to die. The Grave Thread took them like a beast with teeth. Gravity slammed cruisers sideways. Wreckage tore at shields. Old minds woke confused and hungry. Nebula lightning crawled across holes in blue veins. And the Royal Navy, stripped of its choir, had to become physical again, crews sighting by eye, pilots trusting hand signals, engineers feeling vibration through deck plates, captains shouting warnings out windows and emergency ports. The Mercy moved at the front, not fast, not graceful, but perfectly alive to danger. Lamp mast flashing, buoys marking sudden eddies, grapples pulling wreckage aside, old thrusters firing in sharp human bursts that looked panicked until Seraphine realized they matched the storm's rhythm better than any algorithm had. The Radiant Crown followed, then the Aurora Throne, then carriers and lancers in staggered groups. Kavrek pursued too confidently, believing the broken fleet trapped itself. His first cruiser entered the threat at attack speed and struck a gravity shear that folded its bow into its engine spine. The second tried to correct by instrument and drifted into a wreck cloud. The third slowed, forcing his whole line to compress under royal rear fire. Seraphine saw the opening and ordered every aft weapon to fire not at ships. But at the wreckage behind them, the debris storm thickened. Kavrek's neat pursuit became chaos. The human route was not simply escape. It was a lesson written by survivors. Never run where the enemy expects courage. Run where their arrogance cannot follow. Halfway through the thread, the Aurora Throne lost steering. The Queen's flagship began sliding toward a spinning fragment of ancient dreadnought hull, large enough to split it from crown to engine. Seraphine's heart stopped. The Radiant Crown was too far. The carriers too slow, the Mercy too damaged. But Captain Arden turned anyway, throwing his rusted ship across the storm current. He fired magnetic grapples into the Aurora Throne's flank. Lines snapping tight, engines flaring beyond red. The Mercy became a tug against a royal vessel 100 times its mass, impossible by every polite calculation. But human ships, Seraphine was learning, often treated polite calculation as a starting insult. The grapples held for 3 seconds, 4, 5, long enough to alter the flagship's drift. Then one cable snapped and whipped back through the Mercy's already ruined armor. Another tore away a hull plate, the third held, glowing white. Arden's crew screamed readings. Queen Alessandra's image appeared on the channel. "Captain, release us before you are pulled in." Arden answered, "Majesty, with respect. I have had a very long day, and would prefer not to end it by explaining to my government how I misplaced a queen." The last engine on the Mercy detonated into a plume of blue fire. But the Aurora Throne cleared the dreadnought fragment by less than the length of a shuttle. The royal flagship survived, the Mercy did not. The final grapple snapped, and the human ship tumbled away into the grave thread. Dark again, venting atmosphere, spinning toward a wreckage corridor that ended in a white gravity maw. Seraphine shouted for tractor locks, but her systems could not catch through the storm. A carrier tried and lost its beam. Fighters dove toward the Mercy and were thrown back by lightning. On screen, the little ship rolled helplessly. Its lamp mast broken at last. Seraphine opened every channel. "Captain Arden, respond." No answer. She called again. "Elias, respond." Still nothing. The Radiant Crown shook under another gravity wave. Her flag captain begged her to hold course or risk the entire fleet. Seraphine looked at the Queen's flagship. Safe now, at the fleet following the route. At the Mercy falling away, and saw exactly why command broke people. Because love, debt, duty, and math never stood in separate rooms when disaster came. Then a single red light blinked from the Mercy's hull. Not the mast, something smaller, handheld. Someone inside, a cracked observation blister flashing manually. "Long, short, long, Seraphines," comes officer translated with a shaking voice. Message reads, "Keep going." Seraphine closed her eyes for one beat when she opened them. She was no longer the princess who had laughed at rust. She was an admiral who knew what a navy was for. She opened the fleet channel. "No," she said. And that one word seemed to steady the whole bridge. The Royal Navy had spent centuries proving it could destroy enemies. Now it had one chance to prove it could save friends. Seraphine ordered the fleet to continue the evacuation under Queen Alessandra's command. Then took the Radiant Crown out of line with only 3 escorts. Her mother appeared on screen, Seraphine. "Do not confuse guilt with duty," Seraphine answered. I am not, Mother. I am finally learning the difference. She turned the broken dreadnought toward the Mercy, using remaining bow thrusters. Venting atmosphere from damaged ceremonial halls to pivot through the storm, the Varkesh noticed and pounced. Kavrek himself drove his command cruiser into the threat after them, wounded but alive, determined to kill both the royal heir and the human who had ruined his perfect harvest. Seraphine smiled without warmth because, at last, the enemy had become simple. Stop him. Save the Mercy. Survive, if convenient. The radiant crown entered the gravity maw's outer pole, its hull groaning, escorts firing tow anchors into wreckage to hold position. Seraphine ordered every non-essential compartment blown open, stripping more gold, more marble, more royal beauty into space to reduce mass. The ship became uglier and more maneuverable by the second. Kavrek mocked her over open channel. Princess, you ruin your sacred vessel for a corpse. Seraphine replied, No, General. I ruin my vanity for a captain. There is a difference. Your species may not have had time to evolve. Her bridge crew laughed, ragged, exhausted, loyal in a new way, then fired the last functioning lance into Kavrek's path, forcing him wide. The rescue required something no Lyranth War College had taught, so Seraphine asked the humans. She ordered the comms officer to connect her to anyone alive aboard the Mercy. And after a storm of static, a voice answered, Not Arden, but the young human comms officer, terrified and breathless. This is Petty Officer Samir Cole, bridge gone. Captain, trapped in forward control, engines dead, 6 compartments open. We are experiencing aggressive falling. Seraphine almost smiled. Samir. This is Princess Admiral Seraphine Vale. Tell me how to catch your ship. He laughed once in disbelief. Princess, do you have industrial towhooks? No. Do you have cargo grapples rated for stupid choices? She looked at her engineering chief, who nodded slowly. We have royal banner winches. Used to unfurl victory standards from the dorsal spine, Samir was silent, then said, That is the most aristocratic rescue equipment I have ever heard of. It might work, Seraphine ordered the dorsal banner system, armed. Her officers stared as ancient ceremonial drums opened along the radiant crown's spine, each designed to release kilometers of golden victory cloth over conquered worlds. Now stripped of fabric and repurposed as massive cable reels, engineers attached towheads, soldiers carried cutting torches. Priests of the engine choir prayed for forgiveness while welding human-style hooks onto sacred royal hardware. Seraphine guided the dreadnought closer to the tumbling Mercy, timing the roll by eye, not instrument, because the storm lied better than machines. Samir counted from inside the crippled ship, 3, 2, 1, now. The radiant crown fired its victory banner winches. Gold cables caught rusted armor. The impact nearly tore both ships apart, but the hooks bit. The Mercy jerked against the radiant crown. Gravity maw pulling one way, royal dreadnought pulling the other. Cables screaming across the hull, Seraphine ordered reverse thrust. Every engine that still existed fired. The whole bridge plunged into emergency dark. Then backup candles lit because Lyranth tradition apparently had one useful redundancy left. Kavrek's cruiser came behind them, weapons charging for a killing shot. And Seraphine had nothing left to fire. No lances, no missiles, no drones. Only a half-destroyed royal ship holding a rusted human frigate by cables meant for parade banners. Then Captain Arden's voice crackled through the channel. Weak, irritated, alive, Your Highness. If you can roll us 10 degrees starboard, I may have one rude thing left. Seraphine did not ask what. She ordered the roll. The radiant crown dragged the Mercy sideways. And from the human ship's torn belly emerged an old masked driver, manually loaded, externally jammed into place by suited mechanics standing in open vacuum. A weapon so crude no royal ship would have allowed it near a loading dock. Arden whispered, Fire the anchor. The masked driver launched not a shell, but the Mercy's own broken engine core, chained to 3 magnetic buoys. It struck Kavrek's charged forward shield, stuck, pulsed once, and dragged the cruiser's targeting field sideways into the gravity maw's pull. Kavrek realized too late that humans did not waste wreckage. His command cruiser twisted, engines fighting, weapons firing wild. Seraphine poured every remaining thruster into retreat. Cables straining, the Mercy scraping across wreckage. The Varkesh cruiser behind them, sliding faster and faster toward the White Maw. Kavrek appeared on the broken channel, screaming that royal blood would drown in rust. Arden answered from somewhere in smoke, better rust than polish overwrought. Then the Gravity Maw took the cruiser, folding it into a flash of silent white. The shock wave punched the Radiant Crown forward, snapping half the cables but throwing both ships clear of the worst pull. Seraphine hit the deck, rose with blood on her lip, and saw open space ahead, the Grave Thread's exit glowing blue around the surviving fleet. One by one, the Sapphire Crown Armada emerged from the veil. Battered, ugly, alive, the Aurora Throne waited beyond the storm with carriers, escorts, lifeboats, and hundreds of rescued crews. When the Radiant Crown dragged the Mercy out behind it, every surviving Lyranth ship turned its signal lamps toward the human frigate and flashed the same message. Not in royal code, not in polished harmonic song, but in the old human pattern the Mercy had taught them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. No one laughed at the rusted ship then. The aftermath did not become clean heroism, because real survival never does. Hundreds were dead, 3 capital ships were gone. 2 carriers would never fly again, and the Radiant Crown looked as if a golden palace had been thrown through a scrapyard. The Mercy of Soul was worse, barely a ship, more wound than hull. Its crew evacuated through emergency tubes while Lyranth medics discovered that humans complained even when unconscious. Captain Arden was found pinned beneath a collapsed control frame, alive only because a dented pipe had taken the weight his bones could not. Seraphine entered the Mercy after pressure was restored. Stepping through corridors she had once mocked from a screen. Now seeing them properly, every exposed cable had a label. Every patch had a story. Every ugly repair represented a moment when death had been refused by hand. The handwritten sign still hung crooked above the bridge hatch. If it rattles, thank it. Seraphine touched it gently before ducking inside. Arden lay on a field stretcher, pale, bandaged, eyes half open. He looked at her torn admiral armor, the soot on her face, the missing gold plates along her shoulders, and said, "Your Highness, your ship appears to have caught rust." She knelt beside him, ignoring the shock of every noble officer behind her, and answered, "I hope it spreads."